Hello and welcome to the third episode of this series in which I'm trying to win every stage of the 2022 Tour de France with the rider that won it in real life in Pro Cycling Manager 2022. And we're moving right on with the first stage of this episode, the 9th stage of the Tour de France, from Aigle to Châtel-le-Port-du-Soleil, a 192-kilometer mountain stage, which was won by Bob Jungels ahead of Carlos Verona and Jonathan Castroviejo after a staggering 60-kilometer solo attack. Very impressive stuff from Bob Jungels. Now, Bob Jungels was not alone in the breakaway when he won this stage. He was together with his teammate Benoit Cosnefroy, and because he was together with his teammate in real life, I'm allowed to put Cosnefroy into the breakaway from the very first attempts, so that's exactly what I did. The full breakaway formed, it was a 23-man group with some very strong riders, so I thought to myself, Jungels does not have a very, very high mountain stat. This might actually be quite difficult. Now, I wasn't sure if the peloton were actually gonna let the breakaway go, so I put Cosnefroy at the front and just started hoping for the best. But when we reached the foot of the penultimate climb of the day, the Col de la Croix, the gap to the peloton was almost 10 minutes, so I knew the peloton was not gonna be a problem in this stage. We reached the top of the Col de la Croix, and as I said before, Jungels won this stage with a 60-kilometer solo attack, so I wanted to try it at least once. I knew it was suicidal, but I went and attacked with Jungels. I did get away, but yeah, it wasn't like a big gap was growing or something. Goossens was riding at the front, and I wasn't going to stay away. In the valley, I was going to lose a lot of energy, and I was probably going to be dead by the time we reached the final climb. When the descent ended, I had a staggering 30 seconds gap, but by the time we reached that final climb, as I predicted, I was caught, and I was dropped immediately. On the second attempt, I once again put Cosnefroy and Jungels into the breakaway. Once again, we had more than 9 minutes when we reached the foot of the Col de la Croix. And once again, Cosnefroy was dropped on that Col de la Croix. This time, however, we were in the group during the whole valley, and so we reached the foot of the final climb with a lot of energy. And so this was going to be the first real test to see if we actually stood a chance in this stage. There were quite a few attacks on that final climb, especially by Pierre Rolland, who was very active, but I just stayed at the back, let the others do the work, spared my energy, and tried to make sure I had every bit of energy left so I could try and win the stage, because Jungels does not have the best climbing stat of this breakaway. As we entered the last 15 k's of the stage, there were two men up ahead, Louis Magnus and the aforementioned Pierre Rolland, and I was just keeping in the group, let especially Wellens do the work. The group was thinning out, Wellens was really making a difference, as you can see right here, only 6 men left at this particular point, and Wellens was now putting every bit of energy in, and Jungels was really suffering, but we caught up to Rolland and Magnus. Now with 2k to go, it was not looking too bad, but Jungels was kind of dead. And as you know, if you play this game, we entered the last 10k. There is a mountain point up ahead, which means everybody's going to sprint for it. And Jungels had no energy left, so they just sprinted right away from us. And we never caught up back to the front. We were dropped. There was no way coming back from this. And we didn't manage to win this stage. In the end, Wellens won, and we finished in 7th. But third time's the charm, they say, and so we went and tried it again. Cosnefroy and Jungels into the breakaway. It was an enormous breakaway of 33 riders. That is really big. Once again, we had almost 10 minutes to the peloton when we reached the foot of the Col de la Croix, and once again, Cosnefroy was dropped on that Col de la Croix. There were still 29 men left from that original 33 when we reached the foot of the final climb, so I was not really that confident in Jungels' abilities to actually go and win this one. Once again, the attack started coming, this time from Louis Magnus as the first. Once again, I tried to stay in the back, let the others do the work for me and, try to make my way back that way. But by the time we entered the final 5k of the climb, my companions were quite sick of me hanging at the back. You can't blame them really. And there was a 4-man break that was just way too far up ahead. I did manage to get away out of that chasing group with Vuillamos, but by the time we reached the summit, we had a minute behind, and that's just way too much, and we never got back on. In the end, Ruben Guerrero won this one ahead of Carlos Verona and Louis Magnus. We did manage to get 4th with Jungels, so at least, we were making progress from the last attempt. 4th attempt, samey, Cosnefroid and Jungels in the breakaway, 35-man breakaway, 10 minutes at the foot of the Col de la Croix, and Cosnefroid getting dropped on the Col de la Croix. Oh wait, he just got on in the descent. Good job, Benoit. But unfortunately, our trusty companion Benoit was dropped as soon as we hit that final climb. But, it was nice he finally made it over the Col de la Croix. The inevitable Magnus attack once again came, and I tried to stay in the wheels and let others do the work, but with 5k to go, it once again looked like it wasn't going to happen because the gap was too big. However, as you can see right here, the front group just stopped pacing all of a sudden, and that meant that the group with Jungels came back very, very, very quickly. With 3.4k to go on the climb, the gap was still 40 seconds, but the front group just started looking at each other, not cooperating, not riding, and all of a sudden Jungels was coming in very quickly and very hot. However, his energy was very, very low, and when he did catch up to the group with 1.8k to go, he was almost already dead. And what happened a couple of attempts ago with the mountain sprint looked like it was going to happen once again. We were trying everything we could. Maybe it was still possible, but they started sprinting for it, and we just couldn't hang on. At the start of that final uphill drag, we were as close as 25 seconds, but it was just too much. We didn't have enough energy, and in the end we were just too far behind. The stage was once again won by Tim Wellens, who beat Louis Magnus and Ruben Guerrero. We came 7th with Bob Jungels, which isn't really also that great of an achievement, so it was not a great attempt. 5th attempt, and I wasn't going to give up this easily, so once again with Cosnefroid and Jungels into the breakaway. A 17-man breakaway forms. It was quite a lot smaller than last time, and a 8.5 minute gap when we reached the foot of the Col de la Croix. This time, however, Cosnefroid was able to hold on and keep with the group over the top of the Col de la Croix. We were on a little gap, but Cosnefroid was able to close that quite quickly. This meant that throughout the whole valley, and also when we started the final climb, Cosnefroid was able to protect Jungels, which meant Jungels had quite a lot more energy than he had on previous attempts. And so when the inevitable Mike Woods attack came, I decided to just ride my own tempo, have Cosnefroid protect me, and let those other guys completely tire themselves out with attacking each other, whilst I rode at the back, but steadily came back every single time and had more energy over at the end. At 6k to go at the climb, Cosnefroid was done, but the gap was only 40 seconds. They were just up the road, and Jungels still had quite some energy left. The group at the front started to fall apart, with Skuins, Wiemels and Asgreen dropping, and Jungels was slowly but steadily reeling them in and getting closer and getting closer. And at 4k to go on the climb, the front group really started to slow down, and Jungels was closing in on them very, very fast. Schultz had been dropped by this point as well, and we were going to make the catch. And I thought to myself, you know what, I have the momentum, I'm going faster, let's just attack immediately. So that's exactly what I did. I started to attack, and they were able to follow me, but I kept on going. Jungels gave it everything he had, but the gap was not coming. Or was it coming? Oh yeah, there it was. Barguil had gone. Barguil was done. And a couple meters later, also Mike Woods broke down, and then Guillaume Martin broke down, and Bob Jungels was alone over the top. But the gap was so small, and it was 2 versus 1, so maybe if Martin and Woods could cooperate, they were able to catch Jungels back. But it was, oh no, a crash by Guillaume Martin, and that meant the gap between Woods and Jungels grew even bigger, and Woods was now on his own. This was really looking good for Bob Jungels. And as we reached that final little uphill drag, everybody was just completely finished from that very tough battle on the last climb of the day, and so they weren't able to chase down Bob Jungels. Everybody was going so slow, and that meant it was gonna happen. Bob Jungels was gonna win the 7th stage of the Tour de France. We were actually going to do it with some incredible strategies and a little bit of luck, but we had only gone and done it. Bob Jungels wins. You simply love to see it. And so I can conclude, winning the 9th stage of the 2022 Tour de France on Pro Cycling Manager 2022 with Bob Jungels is definitely possible. And we're moving right on to the 10th stage of this tour, a 148 mountain stage from Morzine to Megève, and the finish lays on top of a 20-kilometer long climb, but not a very steep one. It's, as you can see, only 4% average. So, not very steep. This stage was won by Magnus Cort Nielsen, who beat Nick Schultz in a very close sprint. And we roll right into our first attempt. And just like on the last stage, Magnus Cort had a companion. This time it was Alberto Bettiol, who was with him in the breakaway in real life. And so I put Magnus Cort Nielsen and Alberto Bettiol into the breakaway. The breakaway that eventually formed was absolutely enormous. It was a 37-man breakaway, which is so much. And there were some really, really strong opponents like Mathieu van der Poel, like Giulio Ciccone, Kevin Gignac, Guillaume Martin, Christopher Froome, Michael Gogol and Benjamin Thomas. So this was definitely not going to be easy. With a breakaway this large, it can't be a surprise that we had an absolutely enormous gap of almost 11 minutes to the peloton when we started the final climb. But after 15 Ks, nothing had happened on that climb, and I was quite afraid of Mathieu van der Poel especially. So I decided to attack with Alberto Bettiol and see if I could maybe profit from that with Magnus Cort Nielsen. This turned out to be a huge mistake. Because as you can see right here, a lot of guys immediately followed Bettiol and I was just not quick enough with Cort Nielsen. I dropped Bettiol back to start pacing for Cort Nielsen, but it was already too late. Because by the time we entered the last 2K, the group I had formed with my attack with Bettiol was already a minute up. Bettiol did everything he could to bring Cort Nielsen back, but it just was not enough. And the group, the little 6-man group or 5-man group it is, stayed away. In the end, I was beaten by Mathieu van der Poel, so my concerns were right, but I really did play this very, very bad. Giulio Ciccone won, and we finished in 8th place. And so I started the second attempt, knowing this time no attacks with Bettiol, just all balls on Magnus Cort Nielsen. We put them both again in the breakaway, but this time the breakaway that formed was only 11 men strong, it means the opposition is just weaker. The strongest competitors were Thibaut Pinot, Mathieu Bourgaudot and Pierre Rolland. They are strong riders and very good climbers, better climbers than Cort Nielsen is, but, the very big but, as I said in the intro of this stage, that final climb is just not steep enough to drop Cort, and he is faster than those guys, so it was a real possibility to win this one. Once again, the first 15k of the climb were not too eventful, but then Mathieu Bourgaudot attacked, but Pierre Rolland was right on his wheel, and I had my trusty ally Alberto Bettiol to make sure nobody rode away, to keep this group together, and to get Cort Nielsen into the final K in the front group to make sure we could win this one in the sprint. And so as we enter the final 2K, Bettiol was just riding on the front, making sure nobody attacked. It was almost time to start his real lead out, and he was going to up the pace slowly but steadily to make sure Cort Nielsen was in a great position. Into the final K we go. He started his big lead out. There came the sprint. Zimmerman was there. Pinot was there. Galopin was there. But then Cort Nielsen started his sprint and he just rode away from everybody. And he did it. It's a very dominant win by Magnus Cort Nielsen. But we did it on the second try ahead of Thibaut Pinot and Georg Zimmerman. Alberto Bettiol finished in 4th, so that's really nice. And we actually did it once again. Let's go. There is one more thing I wanted to show you guys, and that's this. Alberto Bettiol actually managed to get into the yellow jersey ahead of Tadej Pogačar and Primož Roglič, which I think is quite nice. But as we get back to business that matters, we can declare the 10th stage of the 2022 Tour de France with Cort Nielsen as possible. Let's go. On to stage 11, a 151 mountain stage from Albertville to Col du Granon, over the Col du Telegraaf and over the Col du Galibier, and of course this is the stage in which Jonas Vingegaard dropped Tadej Pogačar and won with over 3 minutes. It's the stage in which he won the Tour de France. We start our first attempt and the tactics were quite simple. Our team was gonna pace the whole day. On the way to the first climb we had Nathan van Hooydonk and Christophe Laporte pacing. On to the first climb it was time for Ties Benoot and Wout van Aert. On to the Galibier we had Steven Kruijswijk, Fruit Valley Kruijswijk, and then we reached the foot of the Col du Granon. The pacing on the first parts of the climb were done by Groupama Française Jeux, Bora Hansgrohe and AG2R Citroën La Mondiale. Meanwhile, I was sitting in the peloton with Vingegaard with Roglič protecting me. At 6.5k to go, I decided it was time for Jumbo to start tearing the peloton apart. Vingegaard at the front of the peloton with Roglic protecting him, and the other guys were really suffering, so I kept this pace going until about 4k to go. Because when Roglic was finally done, it was time for Jonas Vingegaard to put in his attack. Roglic was done, and here we went. We attacked with Vingegaard, Mas was on our wheel, Pogačar was following us, but that was it. It was only a 3-man group going into the final 3k. The rest were completely done. Only the 3 of us, with Enric Mas doing really well to be still together with Vingegaard and Pogačar. But there he was already going. Enric Mas was being dropped, and it was only Pogačar and Vingegaard battling it out for the stage win. Just like in real life, what a realistic game this is after all. And so we were closing in on that final kilometer. Unfortunately, we were not going to be able to take that yellow jersey today. The gap is just too big. But can we still win the stage? Which is the goal, of course. Pogačar is slowing down. Vingegaard keeps going. Vingegaard keeps going. Is he going to drop Pogačar? Pogačar starts his sprint. Is he going to come backwards? Vingegaard going to hold on? Vingegaard explodes. Pogačar is coming around. No, Pogačar is also done, and Vingegaard is going to win it. They're going extremely slow to the finish line. But Jonas Vingegaard from Jumbo-Visma is going to win the stage on the first attempt. Unfortunately, no yellow jersey, but hey, you can't have it all. We won with Vingegaard. Pogačar finished in second, and more than a minute gap to David Gaudu, who came out of nowhere to finish third. What a stage, and what a victory. Let's go. And so I can declare, unsurprisingly, the 11th stage with Jonas Vingegaard is also possible. And as we wrap up this episode, we take a look at the stats. The first stage, the 9th stage it was with Bob Jungels. It was difficult, but we managed to do it with some good tactics. The 10th stage with Cort Nielsen was possible. We messed up the first time, but the second time was great. And another first try with Jonas Vingegaard. So, thank you for watching, like and subscribe, and I'll see you at the next. Goodbye.